All right. Well, good morning or afternoon to everybody, wherever you happen to be. It's exactly noon here in Central Time. So we're thrilled that you're joining us today, either over the Zoom platform or on Facebook, or watching a recording of this installment in our spring webinar series called From Stage Fright to Stage Presence with Dr. Steph Frye-Clark and Dr. Hannah Leffler, two longtime LSM faculty members. And we're thrilled that they're here with us and able to share their expertise on this topic. This is something that Hannah and Steph have presented to the student body on numerous occasions over the past several years, and including actually at the recent winter session we just did remotely, so people all over the country joining that way. And I was just excited to have them share some of this with a much broader audience because it's always so popular every year, always a favorite. This is a topic that's so relevant to many of our students, but then also to many other people who might encounter similar topics even beyond just the stage. So I think just one thing to let everyone know that we are recording this, and we will send around a recording after this is complete so that you may review it again or share it with others, or if you have to jump off early, know that you'll get a recording of it hopefully later on today. So I think with that, I will turn it over to our presenters today. So thanks again.
Hi, everyone. We're very happy to be here. I am Steph Frye-Clark. I primarily have been teaching low brass at LSM for the past almost decade, and Dr. Hannah Leffler teaches primarily flute at LSM. So again, we're very excited to be here. As Tom mentioned, we do teach a version of this class in the summer at the summer program. And we find that the students do find it very beneficial, especially heading into their final week of performances. So obviously the goals for this class are a little bit different, it being virtual, and the people watching not necessarily being of high school age. But the goals are, some of the goals are similar in that we want to present you with tools to becoming a fearless and confident performer and also collaborator. So we're going to be gearing this primarily to people that want to be more confident when performing on an instrument or with their voice, collaborating with other musicians, conducting, or even in some circumstances, leading worship services. I also want to just make sure everybody knows that if you happen to be watching this on Facebook and have a question in the middle of it, you can go ahead and make a comment on Facebook. And Tom said that he will be watching that and he will share it with us here on Zoom. So those of you that are watching via Zoom, also, please take advantage of the chat feature. Both Hannah and I will be watching the chat and making sure that we're aware of when people are asking questions. And please do ask questions. This is typically a really interactive class when we're in person. So this is a little bit different, and we want to make sure that everybody knows that we're happy to, answer things as they come in. So we are going to focus on two broad categories today. The first being mental preparation for a performance, and the other being kind of stage presence and how to kind of manage being on stage. So Hannah.
Hi, everyone. So I just want to add to that the ideas we're kind of talking about today apply across the board, regardless of what your performance is, right? So whether it is a thousands of people, tons, a very high level or high stakes performance competition, or whether it is something, much smaller audience, or whether you're a beginner at an instrument and you're doing a recital or something like that, all of these things absolutely apply across the board. And regardless of, sometimes different things stress different people out. So you might be performing in church and very, very nervous about that. You may have a big competition and that, you're competing for money, or you're, a professional and you have something that's very, very high stakes with a lot of pressure. All of these things are absolutely going to apply across the board. So I just want to mention that regardless of what your level of performance is or anything like that all of these things are things that I use myself. Dr. Frye-Clark uses herself. We've talked about it many times, but it's also things that I encourage my middle school students to use and my high school students to use and my college students to use. So it really, these things are hopefully going to be something that you can absorb in whatever you need for whatever the situation is that you find yourself performing or needing to work on kind of the mental preparation for that. So I just wanted to kind of mention that so that you can kind of think about it in that way. But so we kind of want to start and focus most of this on mental preparation for performance, because I think that's something that in my experience often gets ignored, or we spend so much time working on the physical aspect of performing whatever our instrument or voice type or song, whatever we're doing, we sometimes tend to focus very, very hard on the physical aspect of that, which is understandable. You have to learn how to play an instrument to be able to perform on that instrument, right? But sometimes, and I see this a lot, we get so fixated on that we don't ever think about what it's going to actually be like to perform until we are on stage performing, and then we panic, right? Oh, I never thought about what this was going to feel like. I never thought about what I needed to do to get myself in the headspace for this, because I was so fixated on, I'm doing this because I'm a flutist, but on my fingers, or whatever it is. So for me, we just want to go through several ideas of things that you might try to prepare. These are things that I do to prepare, and some of them might work better for you than others. But I would try them out and see next time you have a performance. Try them out and see what works for you the best. So the first thing I want to talk about that I have found very helpful personally is the idea of visualization before I perform. And this is the idea of mental practice rather than physical. And this can apply in a couple of ways. So the first way that I think about visualization before I perform is when I'm actually going through a practice session for something. Once I get to the point that I know the piece of music, I know how it goes, I can play through it mostly without having to stop and do all of the wood shedding and the small parts, then I start having practice sessions where I pretend like I am performing. And that can be whether I'm in my living room, that can be anywhere that I am. Nothing is changing except that I am raising the stakes for myself mentally. So rather than having the idea that I can stop at any point and go back and fix something, rather than having the idea that I'm just kind of playing through something to see how it goes, I change my whole mindset to this is the performance. I imagine the hall. I imagine whatever the performance space is. I imagine what I'm wearing. Sometimes I actually, when I'm giving a recital, I do a full run through in whatever shoes I'm going to wear and whatever outfit I'm going to wear. Part of that just to make sure that I can breathe in it, that I'm comfortable, but also to make sure that I am fully putting myself into that moment. And so whether I put on the shoes or not, or whether I just imagine them, when I'm doing a practice session like this, I am absolutely in that headspace. I clear everything of distractions. My phone is not in the room. Everyone in the house with me, if there's other people, know to not disturb me at that moment. Like, this is my performance. I walk out, I bow, I do the whole, and I go through the entire performance in my head, making myself nervous. This is it. I'm not going to stop in the middle. I am going straight through, and I want to see how it's going. And then I just use that to collect data. I'm figuring out how it goes, right? Is there any parts that fall apart when I was nervous that I thought I knew? Is there anything that's not working when I do raise those stakes for myself? And I am collecting it. So I'm trying to not judge myself harshly, but to just see where it's at. And I will start this a couple weeks out from a performance. And then every time I do a run through like that, hopefully I can observe progress, right? And this especially ties in for me if I'm doing something by memory. I need to feel those nerves so I know if I actually know it. And so that's the first way of visualization for me is just playing through the performance in my head, pretending like it is the performance. But you can also do this, and I have found a lot of success doing this without actually playing through the performance, entirely mental practice. And this is one of my favorite things to do. So before I have a big performance, I will go in a room, lay down. I have done this in a green room before a performance. I've also done this at my house in bed, like turn the lights off, no distractions. And in my head, I walk through every detail of that performance as if it's the performance. So I walk in the room, I bow, and as I'm going through that visualization, I'm imagining every note that I'm playing, and I am visualizing it going perfectly. Not that I'm not prepared, not that I'm expecting it to go perfectly, but in my head, I am having a perfect performance of whatever the thing is that I'm doing. And I'm, again, making myself nervous. Okay, I'm walking out, the audience is clapping, I'm bowing, I'm tuning. This is how I want to sound. And I go through every note all the way through the end. And that there has been a lot of research on this kind of practice that shows that you don't actually necessarily physically have to be doing something to get the benefits out of it if you are going through it in your mind. There's a lot of progress that can be made. And I have had times where I was struggling with tendinitis and I had to really limit my practicing with some big performances coming up. And so this kind of practice really, really helped me because I wasn't not practicing, but I just wasn't putting my hands through the stress of playing for, 7 or 8 hours a day. So that is something that it may sound silly to you, but if you've never tried it, I really encourage you to try it. Just try, even right now. I want everybody to I know I can't see you, but I want everybody to just take a second and kind of close your eyes and just put yourself in a place, in a high pressure situation that usually makes you nervous, whether it's around a specific person or whether it is a performance or whatever. And I want you to try to find that feeling of nerves. Try to make yourself nervous. This sounds strange, but in your head, what is a place that you can go to that you're going to feel a little bit heightened, a work meeting or something in particular? And just take a second. I want you to just see if you can kind of summon that feeling without actually being there. So I'm going to give you about 15 seconds. Okay, I forgot to count, but I think that's probably about right. So I want you to...
I got myself there, so.
Okay, perfect. There we go. So if you're able to create that actual feeling of adrenaline or the actual feeling of okay, here we go. That is something that you can really use, because if you have not practiced that part, but you've practiced the performance a bunch, there are a lot of unknowns. Adrenaline does crazy things to us sometimes. And so I think that it's really important to practice the performance with the stakes raised like that in our own heads. And that's step one, so that when you get to that performance, it's not a new feeling. Because a lot of times progress comes from experience. So if you're someone who has not performed a lot, or if you're someone who has performed thousands of times, you're going to be a little more comfortable with the feeling of performing through nerves if you've done it thousands of times. So you can kind of make up that gap in your own head through this kind of mental practice. So that's kind of my first tip for that is practicing the whole thing mentally. Do you have anything to add to that?
Yes, real quick, and then we have a question
Okay.
in the chat. So, yes, I use a lot of visualization with my own practice. The thing that actually at this point makes me the most nervous, which maybe some folks on here can relate to, is not the playing anymore, but it's the talking. So in all of the recitals I give, I pretty much exclusively do verbal program notes, and both with the quintet I play with nationally and on solo recitals. I gave a solo recital on Friday and it felt like a lecture recital. And for me, I have to do the same kind of prep with that. I'm like making sure I'm putting myself in that situation and kind of practicing that mentally. The question real quick, Hannah, that we had, and then we can keep moving through our tips here, is do you recommend performing from memory? It seems like a tightrope walking without a net. How do you prevent a crash and burn? That's a great question, because that's exactly how I felt before I started performing from memory.
Yeah.
Go
Do you
ahead.
want to go ahead with this one? I think
I can start. We've both had to do performing from memory. So look, I still feel that way in a lot of circumstances. And the best way to get over that is to start doing it. I have specific techniques, and if people are curious as to what those are, to learning music from memory. And I go through a process if I'm trying to memorize a piece to perform. But that's the other element. Like, memorizing it's one thing. Getting on stage and performing it with nerves is a whole other adventure. So I mean, yes, in short, I would strongly recommend people perform from memory. And preventing a crash and burn, it's a matter of, at least in my mind, is keeping it's similar to other recovery techniques. If you have a crash and burn when you're reading from music, it's the ability to recover. And so it's practicing recovering. So if you have a memory slip, or let's say a line in the music you just totally botch, the ability to kind of keep your head clear and keep working, moving forward. You can never look back. It kind of has to be that constant forward motion.
I completely agree with that. I believe 150% in performing from memory, or from at least learning something by memory, because even if you are going to perform it with the music, there is a level to which you know a piece of music after you have memorized it that you do not know before. And so, yes, I memorize almost everything I perform, even if I end up performing it with the music. Sometimes I just don't want to. There's no reason to perform. If I'm performing in chamber music, you rarely perform from memory in chamber music because you have other people relying on you to not mess up the whole thing.
But here's the thing there, though, is like, so I play in this brass quintet, and about half of our performance, not like our recitals, are memorized. So and that's a whole other thing, because yes, as Dr. Leffler was just saying, you then have other people relying on you. So it's that balance there. But performing from memory, or practicing from memory, at least, I agree also with Dr. Leffler. Memorize your band music if you play in a band. It's a similar situation in that if you know your piece from memory, you can actually be more a part of the ensemble and communicate better with the other people around you, whether you have a conductor or you don't.
And there is a freedom. You start hearing the music differently for me. Once I know it by memory, I start hearing phrases. I'm able to really hear the music rather than being stuck. And that way, even if I perform with music, I put the stand very far down, very far away from me.
Agreed.
And I am able to focus on the performing aspect. But yes, it is terrifying. I don't know, Dr. Frye-Clark, I don't know if you've had this experience, but I've had many performances where I performed from memory, and right before I walked out on stage, I had no idea what the first note was.
You freeze and you're like, oh geez, I don't even know. Yeah, exactly. I don't know what the first note is. And then you get out there and your body just, if you're prepared and you've memorized it, your body does it.
It's a constant. So there, yes. And we won't get into a full memory thing here, but I have a long list of tips and things that I use for memory that I'd be happy to share at some point. But part of that too is the interaction of your conscious to your subconscious, and how much muscle memory you have, and going back and forth between those, catching yourself with mistakes with your conscious, but then letting your body do what you've prepared it to do.
Allowing yourself to do what it's been preparing to do, basically.
The only full memory slip I've ever had in my life, when I completely lost it, had no clue where I was and what I was doing, came when I started overthinking in the middle of the performance. I just went, oh my gosh, what comes next? And I just completely, so but again, it's practice, and it's never too late to start. The more you play by memory, the more you learn to memorize, the better you get at it. So just start. And I tell my students a lot, if they're terrified to perform from memory, memorize the piece, play it for me, and then perform it with the music. And that's fine. We can always put the music there. But yes, it's really good for you. I do heavily encourage that. Was there another question that I saw?
It was a Facebook comment, and it says, and it's smart move. I have started making my beginners do their playing tests within the ensemble. The idea is that they will begin to deal with performance stresses in front of their peers.
And that is going to tie, that's a great comment. That's going to tie in with some we have coming up in a second. I think that's a good comment. So,
do you want to just jump to that one, since we may as well just jump to the one that applies to that. So one of the other tips that we're going to, we have for you all is just that, practicing in front of people. So one of the things that actually have, I not as much this year because of COVID, but I've had my students do in the past, is I actually pair them up into practice buddies. And I try to pair people that maybe are not as comfortable with one another, simply because, again, it's the idea of building this nerve response, or, the anxiety response in your body, and working through that in performance. But I have my students once a week, they have to get together and they have to play something for their practice buddy. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be a solo, it could be band music, it could be an etude. It doesn't matter, just something. It could make something up. And then the idea is they get used to performing in front of other people. So practicing in front of other people, just as this comment from Facebook came in, it does. It helps anyone start to deal with performance stress before the actual performance. You're getting the experience and time playing in front of at least one person, if not multiple, before you even do the actual performance. I mean, it's the idea that performance is, you have to practice it just like you have to practice actually performing. And that's sort of what Dr. Leffler was talking about earlier. Visualization is practicing performance. It's just in your head. You got to practice performance on your actual instrument, or as whether you're giving a lecture or a sermon, practicing that ahead of time in front of, and in this case, in front of someone else. Hannah, do you have anything to add to that?
Just that this can be really, I've discovered that this can be the hardest piece for people, because it's awkward. For a lot of people, it's awkward. And to be honest with you, I get more nervous doing this than I do performing for an audience. It can be really uncomfortable, but because of that, I have set for myself, I am going to find the person that makes me the most uncomfortable. And oftentimes that's friends or family or a partner or somebody that makes me really nervous because they know me and my playing so well. And so for me, the idea of putting myself in that situation, as awkward as it might be, it's way harder to perform for two people that are the hardest on me in my living room than it is to perform in a hall for an audience. I want to get that out of the way ahead of time, because if I've done that already, then the performance itself feels easy. That's the fun part, right? The hard part happens first, and then the idea is that we want to enjoy performing, which we're going to get into. But that's the goal. Why do we do this, right? We want to enjoy it. And so I want to get all of those things out of the way when I'm preparing, more than I want to experience that moment of panic on stage when I'm trying to do this incredibly intricate, crazy thing, and I haven't put myself in any stress whatsoever about it up to this point. So, or productive stress. I haven't put myself in that moment. So for my students, I write a list. I write a line, 5 lines, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 at the top of their music, about a month out from a performance. And they have to come in every week and have filled in a person that they performed the entire thing for. Whether that is, again, anybody. It doesn't even have to be a musician, but someone that makes you nervous. We all have people, right? That we go in the room, shut the door, we want to play, we don't want them to hear us yet until we're fully ready. And so you have to kind of embrace that awkwardness and that uncomfortableness before you get there, right? And I think part of that too is the idea of not judging yourself too harshly, but again, using it as data. If you perform something by memory and you mess up for someone that you're playing, wouldn't you rather that happen 2 weeks before the performance and go, okay, that completely fell apart when I got nervous. So I need to go in and I need to do some work on this part, rather than, I think I have it. Nope, I can't tell you how many times students come in and they're like, oh, I got it. I finished memorizing it this morning. So I got through it all the way to the end once and I'm ready. And
good to go.
And then I say, play it for me. And they get 3 measures in and completely panic. And so you've got to have that, put yourself in that situation. And I'm just going to go ahead and tie in one other point I have here because it ties in here, is the idea of another way you can do this is to video or record yourself. I know I'm going a little out of order here, but I think I'm just going to go ahead and bring that one in, is that's another excellent way to make yourself
that red light
nervous.
That red light's scary.
There is literally nothing that makes me more nervous than recording. And
Agreed.
I have performed my entire life in many different situations. Nothing makes me more nervous than that red light going on. And because I know that I'm going to have to watch it back, and I make myself more nervous than anyone because no one is harder on me than me. And so when I know that I have to watch that back, I have had complete freakouts just performing for a recorder in a room. And so I've worked through that by doing it over and over and over again until I have desensitized myself to hear. I mean, I used to wait a month before I listened to my recitals until I felt like I could emotionally handle it. And then usually they were way better than I thought they were. And so just do it. Just get it out of the way. And then that way, when you perform, nothing can make you as nervous as these things that you have already done. If that makes sense.
You know what I find interesting about especially this time right now, I'll say like COVID era, is that because of the way like life situation is now, we can't really perform in front of live audiences, right? And I remember I split a virtual recital last semester, and I was terrified because it's the same thing as basically being in front of a recorder. Although to me it was even worse because it was an empty room with a camera and a live audience on the other side of who knows how many people. And then it was recorded, it's on YouTube, and it's just there forever. And, and that's scary. And, but then when I did this recital this past Friday, which if you want to find it, it's on YouTube, feel free to go and watch it.
Go watch it. It was
but that one was much easier because I had done it and I'd also then practiced doing it. Again, it's that, so now again, in this different time where maybe don't have a live audience, which in a lot of ways is easier than playing a high pressure performance situation in an empty room or almost empty room. But going kind of along with that, so one thing that I have to keep in mind a lot myself as a performer is why I'm doing it. So I don't perform. I don't give a performance. I didn't do a recital on Friday because it was self-serving, because I just want to sit in a room and hear myself play. I can do that any day of the week. I mean, my instruments are behind me. I can sit down and play. Great. I do it because I want to share what I'm doing with other people, right? So keeping that in mind and staying present through that process and enjoying the process of performing, whether it's for 2 people or for 2,000 people, just keeping in mind, okay, I am sharing like my message, my musical product with whomever is there. And that's something that I think is true for any type of performance. It could be sports, it could be, a sermon, it could be, again, a choir concert, it could be a band concert, it could be anything. And I think it's really important that's something that helps me mentally in the process or in the moment of remembering, okay, why am I doing this? It's not really for me, it's for the people that I want to share what I'm doing with. So
yeah, I would add on to that. I agree 100%. And it took me a really long time to get to this point. I performed for a long time, and I would always find myself, I prepare, I'm excited. And I get to the day of performance or competition or whatever. And all I can think the entire time is like, oh my gosh, it's going to be over. Oh my gosh, it's going to be over.
It's not fun. You're not enjoying them. Right.
No, I was only enjoying it in retrospect. I do the competition. I'm completely panicking. The competition gets announced, whatever happens. And then the second I walk off stage, oh, that was so fun. I wish I could do it again now that I'm relaxed. That was that idea. And I realized that was way up into me working on my doctorate. I realized that I was not enjoying the performance. I was enjoying the idea of performing, and then I was enjoying after performing. And so I kind of had this, I started reading a lot of books and things on mindset, and I started realizing that what if I just enjoyed it while I was doing it? Like, why else would I be doing this? And so I made, which sounds so obvious, but it's really hard to do. But the first time that I ever made that my entire goal was, I am just going to have fun in the moment while I'm out here. And whatever happens, happens. I'm a human being. I'm going to make some mistakes. It's fine. I love this. Else I have no reason to be doing this. And the performance was so much better. And I left stage and I felt like I didn't have that feeling of I want to go do it again. I had that feeling of that was so fun. I had a good time on every note, and I was making phrases, and I was, doing, and that really changed my mindset about performance, because I think that's a hard thing to learn, and it takes focus, and we have to train ourselves to do that. But why do things we don't enjoy doing? But I also think we can learn to enjoy it. And yes, I still have performances that don't go great, or for whatever headspace is, I'm not in a good headspace, or I have something going on in my personal life, and it's hard. It's hard to focus in. But I think that when you can do that, why not enjoy it? And I think we have to work on that. And so now that's the last thing I think before I perform every time. I've done the preparation. It's hectic. I've done all the work. I've rehearsed. I've done my mental prep. I've performed for people. But when it comes to that moment, I can't change anything now. All I can do is like Steph was saying, present. I want to share what I've been doing with people, whether it's music I've written, whether it's music someone else has written. I want to share it. And so let's have fun. Let's do it. Let's share what I've been working on. And then it always goes better. And even if something doesn't go well, I'm in such a better headspace. And then the audience is in a better headspace. They sense that. We can sense that from performers. When I see someone walk out on stage and they look terrified, I'm terrified. As an audience,
I'm sure everybody who listens to this or is listening to this has been to a concert, or it could be, your middle schoolers concert, or whatever. And you've seen someone walk out on stage and they look so scared to be there. And it's like the audience, as an audience member, you're like, oh gosh, I hope this goes okay. Like, you start to get nervous too. And, no one wants that. Hannah, are you good to go back to a couple other mental prep tips?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so kind of veering back here.
Yeah.
The one thing that I used to do this really regularly is it's creating, and these are really specific ideas for like kind of right before you might go on stage, or right before you walk into a classroom or are giving a lecture or a sermon. Someone just said on Facebook, this is all great advice for pastors too. And it really is. Performing comes in all different forms. It could be performing a musical instrument on stage. It could be conducting. It could be delivering a sermon or a lecture to a classroom. Performing is really any time you're getting up in front of someone or no one, if it's getting video recorded, and putting a product out there that you've prepared. So one thing that I like to use, I used to use a lot, is what I would call an inspiration sheet. And I'd recommend that everybody make one. And basically it's a pretty simple concept. What you do is you take out a small, you could do it on your phone too. Generally people have their phones on them all the time now, including even on stage. So phone or piece of paper, and write in your phone or on that piece of paper 2 to 3 things that take you to a good headspace. It could be a color. It could be your favorite, like the title of your favorite song or a song lyric. It could be just a word. Like I used to have the word breathe on mine, because one thing I'm a tuba player. Obviously, I need to breathe to live. I need to breathe to play my instrument. But for me, I would get so worked up, and this is a common anxiety response, that I wasn't breathing anymore. Or I had my carbon dioxide so built up in my lungs, I had no space left to breathe. So not only breathing in, but exhaling out. So I would write that down. I would write down a song that, and this might sound cheesy, always kind of calmed me down, was Over the Rainbow. So I wrote that down because, again, it made me smile. So writing down things that calm me down, and I'd have that on a piece of paper in my pocket and take it out and look at it before walking on stage. And it kind of just, that's that recentering point of like, okay, like, or even, reminding yourself why you're there. So I, especially if you're having some nerve stuff, and it depends, different people have performance anxiety crop up at different times. For some people, it's hours before performance. For some people, it's like the moments before they walk on stage. For others, it's the moment they play their first note. So there's different tools that you can use for these different times. So visualization meditation is one to use in the hours before performance. And then this inspiration sheet, moments before I'm walking out on stage. There's, again, other things that you can do. A lot of them for me come down to breathing. So Hannah, I think you had some other ideas for, especially beforehand.
Yes. So and even during, the same idea of inspiration sheet, I do this, but in a slightly different way. And I make my students do this. Another common anxiety response to something like this is for your head to just start spinning with everything anyone has ever told you. Right? Like, oh, make sure I pick my finger up, make sure I do this, make sure I do this. Don't forget to count, and that kind of, and whatever level you're at, that might be different things that come up for you. If you're more of a beginner level and you're a performer, it might be really specific things about just remembering fingerings or things like that. If you are more advanced, it's more complex things sometimes. I mean, I've been about to perform and tried to remember how to finger a D before, it's like, what's the fingering? I don't know. So for me, it's about slowing my mind down. And I find this with students a lot too. They have to slow their minds down. And these things don't just apply to music. This applies to sports. This applies to any presentation thing. So it's what are the things, just like Steph was saying, what are the things I need to personally focus on? And so what I do is I kind of go through a list of those things before I go out that are going to help me the most. But then on my actual music, I usually pick one thing that I need to remember the most. So and it depends on what the piece of music is. But for me, if it, sometimes it is breathe. It's to remember to take deep breaths. But my most common one is that I write on my music, either wait in your heels or stay grounded. Because when I really get into music, I tend to kind of go up on my toes and I'll lean forward, and that affects my breathing. It affects my sound, my resonance. So sometimes I just need to remind myself one single thing, and it kind of gives my brain this one thing to fixate on, which allows my subconscious and my muscle memory to relax a little bit, because I'm sometimes our conscious mind can really get in the way of performance because it's trying to control it's kind of a control freak, and it's trying to control everything. And so sometimes if I can give it a single focus point, it's like I'm giving it a task to babysit, whether that's breathe, that's what you're focusing on. It allows the rest of my body and the rest of my mind to kind of do what it knows how to do, rather than trying to control every aspect of everything anyone has ever told me about playing. That's just, our minds are, remember all this stuff. And so I make my students do the same thing too. And we come up with a word or an idea together that is the thing they need to remember. And that's very specific. Some people have no problems breathing when they're nervous, but they can't remember how to count. Some people can't remember, it's very specific. So whatever the thing is, they need to remember the most. And for a lot of my students, it's have fun. I need to remember that I like this. It's remember to make music, right? Rather than fixating on the notes and rhythms at that point, it's much more about, so it's personal, but I do actually write that on the top of my music so that it's right there when I'm on stage. And in these moments before I start performing, that's the last single thought I have. And then you just go for it, and that's really kind of what you got to do. And then one other for me is, I find some music that I like to listen to. And when I'm backstage or that day, it doesn't have to be classical. It doesn't have to be it can be completely random. It can be, it can be emo, it can get me hyped, it can be whatever it is, but it's something that makes me really happy and that reminds me that I like this. Because it's really easy to do all of this and then be so nervous that we don't even know why we're doing this to ourselves. Who has ever said that before? Why do I do that? Why do I put myself through this? So for me, it's Mahler 5, fourth movement with the strings and the harp, and I have that, and I am backstage listening to it because it makes me so calm and so happy and so relaxed, and I need to chill. Some people need to get amped, so it's totally up to you.
I'm the opposite.
You gotta.
Oh, I'm listening to like bluegrass music.
I was gonna say heavy metal. I don't.
Yeah.
Steph's listening to Metallica backstage.
No.
So
that's a for sure anxiety attack.
Same. But so, it's completely personal to you, but whatever gets you to that place, whatever it is, you need to know that. And that also ties all the way back into what we were talking about before, which is know yourself. What do you need to do as you do these practice performances? If you have 5 practice performances, hopefully each one you learn something new about yourself. I did this time and that worked. I did this time and that worked. This wasn't as good for me. And you've got it. That just comes from experience. But the more you do it, the more you learn about yourself in that way. I'm going to toss it back to Steph. Do you have anything specific to add to any of that?
Not in particular. I know we wanted to talk a little bit about, and this applies differently to different types of situations, but about stage presence and etiquette. Are you good to kind of talk about that for a bit?
Oh, I think I guess
Awesome.
We could go ahead and add. Does anyone have anything to add to any of that about?
Yeah. Again, you can ask questions via Facebook or write in the chat if you're on the Zoom webinar itself.
Or just comments, questions or comments.
Yeah. Yep. Comments are great too.
We can move on and we'll just keep
keep looking.
Feel free to circle back at any point if you want to.
Yeah, for sure. So in addition to getting yourself mentally prepared to do whatever performance it is, and then enjoying the process of performing itself.
We're enjoying it, Steph.
Yeah, we are not just getting through it. We're enjoying the whole from beginning to end. Another thing we got to make sure that we're thinking a little bit about is how we're handling ourselves on stage, whatever that stage might be. It doesn't have to be a physical stage. So some of these things will apply differently to the different performance settings, whether you're playing an instrument, conducting, leading worship, giving a lecture, teaching a class, whatever it might be. But one thing that I think stands no matter what situation you're in is confidence. So, and a lot of things with confidence is you might not feel confident, but it's all about fake it till you make it. For me, that's what it was for a very long time. I mean, I was definitely not feeling super confident, but it starts with simply even walking into whatever space it is with confidence. So that doesn't mean like walking super slow. It doesn't mean shuffling your feet. It doesn't mean looking down. Generally, walking with confidence means busting your butt until you get to where you are going to be giving whatever form of performance you're going to be giving. Walking with purpose, smiling, looking like, again, that you're happy to be there, even if inside you just feel absolutely terrified.
I like the walking with purpose. We are getting from this point A to point B, and we have a mission.
It just has to start there. Like, you might feel terrified, but if you don't walk with purpose, you're just feeding into that terror. If you walk with purpose, you may be able to actually walk through some of it, because it's like, okay, nope, I'm still going to do this thing, and here we are. And then you'll get to where you need to be, and then things start, right? So walking on with confidence. Also, at the conclusion of a performance, whatever it might be, exiting with confidence. So, there's a whole slew of things that we could also talk about in regards to not giving things away on stage. So if a mistake is made, because guaranteed, at least, I mean, I play a brass instrument, like we make mistakes all the time.
Oh,
And
we don't. Flute
I know,
players-
well, I know that. That's why I'm not including flute players in this, because
What?
I'm fully aware that you in particular, Dr. Leffler, you've never made a mistake in your life, but me,
Yeah,
I make mistakes in every performance. So, but just having the ability to kind of move on from it and not give anything away here or in your body language. That's something I work with my students a lot on too. And then making sure no matter what happens that you, at the end of the performance, you get up, you look happy to be there, or I get up because I'm sitting down, and you walk off the stage with the same level of confidence that you walked on with. I already kind of mentioned this, but earlier we were talking about like, why are we doing this? We're doing it to share something, right, with an audience. Hopefully we're not doing that while being super, super sad. Like if you're, even if like you could consider like this a performance, if Dr. Leffler and I were on here looking really unhappy or nervous or just sad to be here, it probably wouldn't be received very well. Granted, I don't know how it's going to be perceived, but at least like you want to show like we are happy to be here, and we want to show you that by smiling and by looking happy.
Even if,
go ahead. Yeah.
Not to say you can't have anything sad going on. We've
no.
all got happening. It's just for that moment. No, that's not what you were saying. I'm just clarifying. Even if for that moment you have to set it aside, it will still be there. For me, I literally picture putting it in a box, closing the lid, and setting it aside. And I'm not pushing it down. I'm going to deal with it later.
Yeah.
But I can't do anything about it right then. Can't change it. It's just going to have to wait till I get done. Yes. And I do the same thing for practice sessions as much as I can. I'm not perfect at this, but to get to practice, I know that's a tangent, but it will be there when you are done. Right? So for that moment, whatever the thing is, that is not what you're doing right then. And it doesn't matter, right? And that is a really important skill as a performer, is being able to set things aside for a second. Right? Now, sometimes you want to use things in performance, right? Sometimes I do want to tap into something dramatic, but that's when I'm actually playing a piece. In terms of stage presence, we're doing it, so we're happy to be doing it, and some of that is you are performing from the second you start to the second you are done, and not just when you're playing, not just when you are speaking or whatever the thing is that you're doing.
Agreed. Well, Hannah, we have about 10 minutes, so I think we could probably cover a couple other things and then see if there's any remaining questions. I don't think we necessarily need to go over, we talk a lot about bowing with the high school students, but
okay. Just do it confidently.
Yeah, bow confidently.
If you need to bow, don't bow with your head
Don't look
up.
at the audience while you're bowing. Like,
Right,
look at your feet.
Right.
That's the biggest one. Put your feet together.
Bow in front of a mirror. See what you look like in front of a camera. We'll stop.
Record yourself.
Yeah. I would like to vamp into timing when you're on stage a little bit, if that's okay. So take your time. This may seem really obvious, and for some people, time speeds up when they're nervous, right? So for some people, they feel like everything they're doing is on fast forward. For some people, it slows down and everything is taking forever. And so remember, that is a perception. It's not entirely accurate. So sometimes I have had many performances where I felt like I was taking my time. And then when I watched a video, I was playing fast, I was walking fast, I was, everything was faster. And in that moment, I felt like I was swimming, like underwater, like everything was slow motion. And that's not what was happening at all. And I have a lot of times I've listened to my students perform in competition or in recital, and they start something and I just white knuckle the sides of my chair because they are going so fast. I have never heard them play anything that fast in my life. And they don't have any concept of the fact that they're going 40 clicks faster on the metronome than they were the day before. So I think making a conscious point of taking your time. And so that comes, walk out with confidence, but before you perform, before you start or speak or whatever the setting, take an extra second. It may feel like forever, but it's probably about right for the audience. It's really jarring in an audience for someone to walk out, pick up their instrument, and go. We have not had time, especially if you're in a setting where it's multiple performers or you're coming from one performance to the next, you need to give us a second, right, to kind of calibrate. And you need to calibrate yourself to being on stage.
You gotta set the mood a little bit.
Correct. So whatever you're about to perform, that's the time where you're going to set the mood. So if I'm performing a sad piece of music or a dramatic piece of music, I don't want to walk out sadly to set the mood. I want to walk out confidently and then take a second to put myself and the audience in that place. So sometimes we don't want to conflate those things. So I walk out, I'm happy to perform, I bow, I tune, I do whatever my pre-performance ritual is. And then I take a second and I just put my head down, right? Make sure everything's set. And then I'm putting myself in that mood. And I'm putting the audience in that mood because they need that, right? And then when I start, I am fully acting in whatever the mood is of the piece that I'm playing, right? But there's more time than we think when we're performing. There's a take a breath, take an extra breath.
And the same thing applies to the end of a performance as well. Like when you're done playing a piece, whether it's a super fast flourishy ending or speaking, or it's a beautiful, slow, sad melody that's ended, you don't want to just throw your instrument down or it or whatever it might be. It breaks this, it's that fourth wall is what it's called, but it breaks this barrier of this moment that it can be really magical, but just gets kind of, and I've seen students do it, I've seen professionals do it. It just gets destroyed because that moment of magic at the end of the piece, that feeling, that mood is broken. So let it rest for a second before you move your instrument, before you stand up, before you do whatever you're going to do next, shuffle papers. Gives time at the end of a piece.
Right. Yeah, because it's for yourself, but you also need to think about the audience. What do they need? What would you want as an audience member? Because as the performer, you are guiding them through this. You are taking them on a journey. And for you to have this brilliant performance, which it absolutely will be. I have no confidence. I have no doubt. I have utter confidence.
You have no confidence.
I have no confidence. No, I have utter confidence that whatever you're doing, it will be great. When you're done, if you take that moment and then you're just right, which takes me into my next point, which is whatever happens out there, right? Whatever happens out there, you do not, if something bad happens or it doesn't go well, do not reflect that on your face. You are performing until you are off the stage. And I cannot tell you how many times I did not know something went wrong in someone's performance until their face reflected that. And then I immediately knew that it did not go well. Because remember, not everybody in the audience knows that piece like you do. If you take lessons, your teacher maybe knows it that well. I mean, some people do, but even audiences are generally forgiving. They want things to go well. And so if you are reflecting every mistake on your face or rolling your eyes or slumping your shoulders, or if you have a performance and you get done and you're immediately defeated, even if I thought it went pretty well, now I'm worried. Now I'm stressed for you. I don't know what happened exactly. So it is your job. You are performing until you are out of sight, right? And then you can have your feelings about how it went, and that's a whole different thing. But do not reflect on your face every single emotion that comes through, that every mistake you make, because maybe they don't know. I mean, even if they do know, if you keep that confidence, they'll come on that journey with you, right? And
similarly, yes. So I 1,000% agree. And yes, when you get off stage, you can have your moment of, oh, well, that did not go the way I wanted it to, or you can have your disappointment. But then if you have an opportunity to interact with those that maybe watched you perform, you have to go right back into the space of it went great. Because especially because, again, audiences don't know a lot of the time. And if an audience member comes up to you and says, oh my gosh, that sounded amazing, I loved your lecture, your sermon, your performance, and you say, no, it did not go well, like what it'll make, besides belittling yourself, what it can also do is make that audience member kind of feel stupid. Like they don't know what they're listening to. It's like, well, okay, I guess I didn't hear that. That must mean I don't know how to listen. So,
and there's nothing more uncomfortable than telling someone good job and them coming back with all the reasons why it's not a good job.
Why
and
it wasn't.
That's not just in music. That's in a million things. It happens all the time, and it's really uncomfortable.
Agreed.
If I tell you that you did a great job and that I enjoyed what you did, and you're like, no, I didn't. That was not good. That was, and it is really off-putting as the person giving the compliment, or, oh, you have no idea. That was terrible. That is a really, really, it's not a gracious way to receive a compliment, right? So, I mean, you don't have to be like, it was really good. I really killed it. But thank you. Just you deal with your feelings about how you performed separate from the audience. So, yeah. But I think that's kind of,
I think that kind of, wraps us up to what both Dr. Leffler and I wanted to convey to anybody who's listening today. And I mean, I guess we can take a minute or two if anybody has any questions or comments or any points of discussion they want to bring up. Feel free to throw them again in the chat here on Zoom or on the Facebook page.
If something comes up later that you want to, feel free to email either one of us. Our information is available on the LSM website. And
on the LSM website.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't see anything. Oh, there's another one.
Oh. So this Charles has said, when I practice for a public speech, my practicing is usually not as good as the final speech. It seems that my anxiety actually helps me. With musical performance on organ, it's always not as good as what I've practiced. Any suggestions?
I have a thought about this. So if you find that you are speaking, and I am the exact opposite from this, but both things play into each other, right? The year of COVID has made me much better at speaking because I have to do it a lot and speak on camera a lot. But for me, I think if you can think of those things as a similar thing, right? So for me, thinking of my speaking as a performance has helped me become much better at speaking because I know that I'm comfortable performing music. For you, it might be helpful to think of a musical performance as more of like a presentation or a speech. Think of the music that you're performing as. Try to figure out maybe what in speaking you feel comfortable. You said you feel like your kind of anxiety helps you speak better. So what piece is it? Do you feel like you're able to get more emotion across in your speaking when you're nervous? And I would say that carries through to music. And if you could kind of tap into whatever you feel like when you're speaking, because those two, speaking in public or performing in public are not that different. And maybe you are being more in the moment when you're speaking. You're allowing yourself to kind of have more emotion. You're allowing yourself to interact with the audience a little bit more than maybe you are when you're performing. And maybe if you can kind of tap into that when you're performing and think of it more as a interactive thing or something like that, that might help you. That would be one thing I could think about, is trying to kind of figure out what one thing feels like from the other.
Yeah, and just one more thought on that too, because I in some ways I completely understand that, and I think for me what it is when I am I mean at this point most of my speaking is also done on a performance stage, so I'm going back and forth between being a speaker and then a performer. When I'm giving a speech or speaking, I have an opportunity, at least in my head, to be more improvisatory with what I'm saying. I don't have to go off of an exact script. versus when I'm playing my instrument, if I'm playing a piece of music, I have to follow what's on the piece of music. And if I don't, and I mess that up, then it's a mistake. If I change what I'm going to say, that's not a mistake. I'm just adjusting what I'm saying. So I don't know if that could play into it. Again, we're kind of both going into a little bit of mindset stuff here. But if you could approach your performing as maybe not improvisatory unless it's written in there to be so, but as like you have freedom and flexibility to try things on stage and be more flexible with, you know, expression or musicality. I don't know. That's just another thought kind of on the same topic.
That would be,
So.
yeah. Well, I think, should we maybe wrap it up there? I think we're right at an hour, unless anybody else has anything else right off the bat. I think so. Well, thank you all for tuning in, and those of you watching later.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, this was really fun, and we're both available for any questions after the fact. So if anything pops up, feel free to send an email, and we'll get back to you.
Please do.
Thank you, Steph.
All right. Thank you, Hannah, and we'll talk to you later.
Yeah. Bye, everybody.
All right, bye.